So before I begin, I want you to think about something. I want you to think about all of the cloud-based services you use on a regular basis. And a cloud-based service would be things like Google Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive or streaming services like Netflix and YouTube Premium and Paramount or sports broadcasting. All of those things. And once you have an idea on how many of those services you use, I want you to ask yourself, do you know exactly how much you pay a year for all of those services? And while you're thinking about that, let me introduce myself. My name is Brandon, and I'm going to be talking to you today about your own building your own cloud and making your own home server and self-hosting it. We're going to be walking through all of the hardware, some of the software, things that you can do with your own home server, and why it's worth the effort. So now that you might have gotten a figure in your head, you've probably undershot that number by a lot. You see, just if you use these three services using Google One, iCloud, and Dropbox Plus, you're paying about $300 to $400 a year for storage that you don't own. What do you mean? It's your own files, right? Of course you own it. Well, sure, it's your data, but guess what? These companies can change their prices at any time they want. They can shut down these services at any time they want, or they can change their terms and conditions at any time they want. But what if you paid for the hardware one time and you owned it forever? Well, that is where a home server comes in. You see, a home server is nothing more than just a personal computer that can run 24/7 on your network. It's like your own little private data center. Notice I said home personal computer. It doesn't have to be some giant data center level rack mounted piece of equipment. It can be a reused computer, and we'll talk about that more in a second. But you see, this home server will be using something called a NAS, and a NAS stands for a network attached storage. Think of it like your own little Dropbox that lives in your house. All right, and that is something that is off of a home server, and it's a home server. It's just something that runs all the time, and it connects to your own in your house. But the thing is that you can set it up to where you will be able to access this stuff anywhere in the world, so long as you have an internet connection. And what you'll be doing is you'll be self-hosting these services, which just means you'll be running your own versions of a web service, like for example's sake, we'll just say running your own version of a Dropbox, and it'll be on your own hardware, only using data that you control. So because of that, there are some hardware things you want to consider if you decide to pick up your own home server, and that will be the CPU, the RAM, the storage, and the networking. With the CPU, you do want to use something with a multi-core processor. Basically, that means it's like a bunch of little processors, which is a core, built into one big processor. And that's what actually goes into the big old motherboard. Now, you might be thinking it might be pretty hard to get a multi-core. The reality is the multi-core processors have been around for a very long time. As long as you don't pick up a computer that's from the 1990s or older, it more than likely has a multi-core processor. As for the networking, you do want to have an Ethernet connection, so just take a cable and run it from your Wi-Fi router straight into that computer, and boom, done. Networking solved. If you want to get more complicated, you can, but all you need is one cable, a Wi-Fi router, which you probably already have, and your own home server. Now, the RAM and storage, it can get a little harder, a little more to think about. With RAM, you do want at least 8 GB, and that would be so that you can host your operating system, but also so you can run a lot more. You'll be hosting a whole bunch of services. So if you can get up to 16 to 32 gigabytes of RAM, you'll be able to run a whole lot more applications simultaneously. Not only that, but you can also choose how much storage do you want. You do want to have at least 2 drives so that in case one of them fails, and you can have a backup. You would want to use hard drives for bulk storage, so that would be your documents, your videos, your photos, the things you may not access very often because you don't need that big speed. but you would want to pick up an SSD for the operating system itself, so every other service that you have can run incredibly quick. Now, this all sounds expensive, so let's talk about how much does it cost? Well, that's the cool thing about a home server is that you can pretty much decide how much you want to spend. Now, with a budget build, right, I have my own home server and I did it with the budget build option. I have a 2015 era Dell Optiplex 7010 that I shoved a basic SSD into and a singular hard drive with more to come. And I did all of that and bought the computer off of eBay for maybe 200 bucks. And that was with one big hard drive, too. If you don't want to build it yourself, but you don't want to have to buy a brand new pre-built, you can get something like a mini PC, like an Intel N100. That little thing can run you about 300 bucks, and you can still you can still upgrade it whenever you want. But you can do whatever you want with it. But if you really don't want to build it, you just want to buy one outright, I can always recommend the Synology DS2 through 3. It is a bit less flexible operating system wise, but it's plug and play, and you'll be paying for it too. Now, that's all about the hardware. Let's talk about the software a little bit. I highly recommend TrueNAS. TrueNAS is an operating system that's built off of Linux, and it is almost the standard. It's the industry standard for home and small business storages. What it does is that it runs off of something called a Docker container, which is, think of it as like a screw storage bin for a giant wall mount of all different kinds of screws. It runs one little thing here and one little thing here and one little thing here, and it keeps it all nice and neat and organized so they don't run into each other. It's remote accessible. You can have your own software for that, which would allow you to access the storage anywhere you needed to, so long as you have the internet. But what's coolest is that this thing is a web-based dashboard. You only have to log into the actual machine one time, and that's to set up your username and password. The rest of it, you can do it from a web browser. You don't have to buy a big book of Linux terminal commands that's about this thick in order to learn how to use this. You can go as technical or as casual as you want. So, and that's what makes TrueNAS so great. I highly recommend it. It's if you want to learn more, it's there. If you don't need to. So, what kind of processes can you self-host? Well, the rule of thumb that I've always put is if there's a cloud service, you can host it yourself. So if you don't want to pay for Google Drive or Dropbox anymore, you can run Nextcloud. You don't want to pay for Netflix? Guess what? You can go with Plex, or you can go with Jellyfin. If you don't want to use Alexa anymore, you can go with Home Assistant, or because they make their own little hubs just like Alexa, and you can connect it yourself, keep all your data private at the same time. Or if you like playing games like Minecraft and you don't want to pay to host your own server, you can do it for free on your own NAS. So, but why would you bother? I mean, it seems like a lot of effort to set up and get hosted and get connected. Well, there's a couple of benefits. First one being you own your data. Now, Google may have your data and you may own it, but you don't own it. They can use that data to train AI, for example. They can data mine. You don't have to deal with any terms of service changes. There's no corporate access to your personal data unless you want them to. Now, the hardware, it can be a bit pricey, but when you think about how much you pay for cloud-based services, it's going to pay for itself over time, and it can often pay for itself in under 2 years if you compare it to how much you're spending with those subscription costs. And after that, your cloud is essentially free. On top of that, it's you have total control. You have infinite customization. That means no storage capacity limits, no forced updates, no shutdowns. You decide what runs, when it runs, and how long you want to keep that data. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up here, but take back your data. All right, these cloud subscriptions, they can cost up to hundreds of dollars a year, and a home service can eliminate almost all of that. TrueNAS and Docker, those two companies have made it more accessible to anyone that is willing to learn. And I highly encourage you to do it. And if you decide to put forth that little bit of effort and that little bit of money, what do? You get private, permanent storage that you control completely. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm openly available at my email, worsburb at email.uscupstate.edu. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a fantastic afternoon, and I can't wait to see what kind of NASs you're going to build at home. Good luck.